that engine is working. It does feel punchier than the V6 diesel Ranger. Oh, it's making some rough sounds when it's started. Not good. G'day, I'm Paul. A little while back we drove the Ford Ranger plug-in hybrid. It was at the launch and I wasn't really able to do the testing that we normally do here at the Proving Ground. So I got the car back. This is the top spec. It's called the Ranger plug-in hybrid Storm Track. It is, hope you're sitting down for this, almost $90,000, which is a crazy amount of money. That is too expensive. The entire plug-in hybrid range starts with the XLT at just under $72,000 before on-road costs, so still a huge amount of money. So today we're going to do a detailed review on this. We're going to do some light off-roading. We're going to do some towing as well. We'll look at the underbody too, so I'll run you through how this looks underneath the skin compared to a normal Ranger. Now, if you do want to skip ahead to other parts of this review, you've got the time codes on the screen, or if you're on YouTube, you can scroll down and use the chapters below. On the design front, this car is built in South Africa. It attracts a tariff because all cars imported from South Africa have that tariff. So that is where Ford doesn't have a great deal of wiggle room. Chinese competitors like the Canon Alpha plug-in hybrid and the Shark don't have that tariff, but still I just think the pricing is pretty high on this. But anyway, we'll see whether it's worth that value. On the design front, you've got a unique color here for Storm Track, and it's like a baby blue. It stands out, it sort of looks different to other Rangers on the road. A lot of piano black down the front here, so you can see it featured extensively throughout the front there, which is interesting. You've got a camera down here for the 360 camera with a little washer in it as well. Got full LED matrix headlights, fog light down the bottom there, and then around the side here we've got a set of meaty all-terrain tyres, so this should give it some decent performance off-road. Unique wheels here as well to the plug-in hybrid with this baby blue colour in the centre and then a matte black finish on the outside there. These wheels actually look pretty cool. That's on an 18, so yeah, nice looking setup. Wheel arch guards just there. You've got plastic side steps. Again, I've complained about this before on dual cab utes. It's just a bit of a cheap look, but anyway, you can replace those if you want to. Storm Track badge down the side there. PHEV over here, which is where you're going to find V6 on other variants, so PHEV there. A camera there as well. Privacy glass, you've got these standoff roof racks up the top. This is really cool. So this is an Australian creation, which is really cool to see. So Australian engineers came out with this. It's a flexible racking system. So the way that it works is, in this standard setup here, it just looks like a sports bar that you'd normally find on a Ranger. But what you can do is bring it all the way back, or stop it anywhere along here really. But if you do bring it all the way back, what you can then do is lift these sections here, so you can actually store longer items, which normally you wouldn't be able to do without putting a hoop down the back here. So really cool creation, and it's good to see that stuff like this has been created here in Australia and is patented as well. Disc brakes at the rear, and then this retains leaf spring suspension. When we look at the underbody, I'll run you through how all that appears beneath the skin. There is a lot of complexity under there. And then I forgot to mention this as well, little decals there too. Come around to the back with me. Now around the back, Storm Track is a limited edition, they're saying, as a sort of launch spec. The weird thing to me is, so Storm Track badge there, what you'll notice with the taillights is partial LED. Normally the upper spec Ranger models have full LED taillights. This for some reason doesn't, and I did notice also inside the cabin, which I'll get to a little bit later on, it has some of the features that you'd normally find on lower Ranger models. So it's a bit of a weird spec here, given that it is so expensive, but it does come with a couple of these options. With the flexible racking, we've got a powered tray cover there as well. You've got 360 lighting system over here, camera mounted down the bottom there. Now this has a 3.5 tonne brake to towing capacity. We're going to have a little play with that later on to see how well it goes. More piano black around the back there. And if I open this tray, you can actually open this roller cover from inside the cabin, or you have a button over here that you can use as well. What that's going to reveal is what Ford calls the Pro Power on Board system. Now this is a really cool setup because it gives you a number of power options. So 3.5 kilowatts on this side on a 15 amp plug, and then 3.5 kilowatts on that side on a 15 amp plug as well. That is some meaty power output, and Gives you a big difference here between this car and other vehicles in the plug-in hybrid range, because you are able to suck a fair bit of juice out of this. The downside though is that the battery is tiny. So yes, okay, great, I can pull a lot of current out of this, but not for a long time, and I've got to make sure the battery is charged before I do it. So there are a couple of flaws to that whole scenario, but you'll also notice here on the load floor as well, to accommodate the battery width which sits beneath the skin, it eats into your load floor. So you are compromised ever so slightly on space there as well. They say that this car has no compromises and that it will do everything a Ranger does, but you know, already you can see here that stuff like that is eating into what a typical Ranger can do. And later on when we go for a drive, we'll see whether this is affected by having a load on the back and how well it actually performs compared to a Ranger when we take it off-road and go around the ride and handling track as well. Now, let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. What do you think about the pricing? Would you buy this, or would you just get a Shark or a Canon Alpha plug-in hybrid? Which one are you going to be going for? Let me know down in the comment section below. Okay, so we are inside the cabin. What I'm going to do, because we've reviewed the Ranger 1,000 times now, I'm not going to go into minute detail about everything. I'm just going to focus on some of the stuff that's different here in the top spec plug-in hybrid. If you do want to check out our Ranger review where I go through all the stuff in detail, there is a link up there that you can have a look at, or in the description below there is a link as well. So the basics are the same. You've got the same vertical infotainment system. Ahead of the driver you have the narrow screen. Like I said before, it doesn't feel like this is based on a top spec car like the Platinum, because you're missing out on stuff like cooled seats. These seat belts don't go up and down, which is something I found they've chopped and changed, and that is something they've removed on some specs for some reason. Don't know why. But you do find Storm Track here over on the dashboard there with more piano black. Kind of just loaded the Storm Track up with heaps of piano black, and then blue highlights around the car. So here, over on the doors, in the seats as well, so, and over on this side too. So it gives it a slightly different vibe. Outside of that, it comes with all the sort of bells and whistles you'd expect, like your auxiliary switches up the top. The other thing they removed as well is the USB port up the top here for your dash cam. It's so strange how they make these weird decisions. Maybe it's because this one is built in South Africa that they've toyed with some of these specs, but yeah, that is definitely a weird one. Now, on the infotainment display, this is actually where you can run your Pro Power onboard system. And I mentioned before that, you know, if you run out of battery, you don't have any electricity to use from your system, but you can actually run the car in generator mode. And when it is in generator mode, you're actually able to then use the vehicle's engine to run your components at up to 6.9 kilowatts. So there is a bit of flexibility there. Then in the back as well, you've got a 10 amp 230 volt outlet. So it's good to see that all of that is catered for here on the screen. Outside of that, you've also got charging information. So this is where you're able to set departure, and you can also do that through the application as well, and adjust things like your charging times depending on charging location. So yeah, there's a few features there to play with. Outside of that, the rest of this is all pretty straightforward. There is an EV button here that I'll run you through when we go for a drive, but the rest of this is pretty much the same as what you're going to find in a normal Ranger. In terms of the second row, you do still get storage underneath the seat, so that is unaffected. Legroom in Ranger is reasonably good for knee room. Toe room's not too bad, and headroom is okay as well. But like we've seen in a lot of new utes in the segment now, they've all moved forward a little bit in terms of what they're offering in the second row. Tasman, for example, does reclining of the seat. You've got better storage options beneath the seat, better connectivity. So they have sort of thought about a couple of extra bits and pieces here that, that Ford probably needs to catch up on now that the Ranger has been out for a few years. Before we get this up on a hoist, that's where your petrol goes. Actually, I'll explain why that's not opening at the moment. In just a second, this is where you charge. Now, you'll notice something here. There is no DC fast charging. You just have 15 amp, 3.5 kilowatt charging, which is pretty slow. Even though the battery is only just under 12 kilowatt hours in size, that's still a 3 or 4 hour charging time on its fastest setting. Both the Shark and Canon Alpha plug-in hybrid have DC fast charging. So a little bit disappointing there, given that Ford has gone to a lot of effort with the Pro Power onboard stuff and elevating that power output, whereas charging the vehicle actually takes a while. That will give you around 50 kilometers worth of driving range. So the reason you can't just open this, and this is the case in pretty much all plug-in hybrids, a normal internal combustion car will actually have a charcoal canister that captures fuel vapor from the tank. As it heats and cools, it will emit fuel vapor, and instead of it going into the atmosphere, doing environmental damage, it goes through a charcoal canister, that then allows the vehicle to either recycle that or safely emit it from the vehicle. These systems are completely pressurized, which means the fuel vapor stays within the fuel tank. And because in theory a plug-in hybrid could go months without actually ever switching on the internal combustion engine, they pressurize this system. So for you to actually refuel the vehicle, you have to press a button, which then allows this to open and allows the fuel vapors to be safely contained. Okay, so we're going to have a quick look under the Ranger plug-in hybrid just to see how it compares to a standard Ranger and just to give you an idea of how tricky it is to package a lot of this plug-in hybrid hardware under a dual cab ute. So up the front, you've got tow hooks. These are only rated to the vehicle's GVM, so they're not load rated. This little lip here is for aero, so it gives them a little bit of an aero improvement. And just in there as well, you've got variable vanes that will open and close depending on cooling requirements, and also basically they can start the vehicle with those closed to heat the engine faster, and it means that it can burn less fuel, and then they'll open it up for cooling. Up the front, you've got protection for not only the front end, that protection continues all the way down here. It's quite impressive actually how much protection they've given that entire underbody. And what you're going to notice, the theme as we move our way down here, there is a lot of electrical components that have to run down the whole sides of the car to get to the back. We've actually got some cooling up here as well. So you'll see some ducting over here for cooling that runs from the front to the back, again for the battery. So there is a lot of componentry there to make that happen. This engine, part of the reason it is so detuned is because of emission requirements for Europe, which is one of the markets they're selling this in. As a result of that, this has petrol particulate filter and a lot of emissions regulation equipment installed on it, and a lot of heat shielding. So this whole exhaust is just layered in heat shielding. Then there's heat shielding above it as well. There's heat shielding around the fuel tank. It really is just, seems like overkill, but this must get up to a higher temperature when they are doing particulate burns on this engine, because there's just a huge amount of heat shielding to be had there. The electric motor for this car sits within the transmission, so it means that they've had to move a lot of these components back a little further compared to a standard Ranger. Okay, so let's jump through to this section. You can see the drive line running down here from the back of the transfer case. We've got protection here for the fuel tank, similar to the Kia Tasman we tested the other day, plastic protection there. And then you can see all that heat shielding around the fuel tank. Basically it surrounds this entire side of it, and the heat shielding is from this end of the car, as in it needs to shield the heat from all of these components. So all of those cables will run through an inverter, and it's a bit hard to tell exactly where that's located, whether it's up the back of the vehicle here or wedged up there somewhere, but that inverter is going to effectively allow you to input electricity from outside the car and then export electricity through the vehicle to load. The exhaust then routes above the differential and out the back. In terms of suspension, you can see the bump stop up the top there, leaf springs with sort of an inverted lower leaf there. So when this is compressed, this has quite a significant payload, and they've tried to retain a lot of the standard elements of this as a dual cab ute. Part of the reason why this feels firm at times is because you've got just a lot of load that this has to carry, and not a huge degree of flexibility when it comes to hitting bumps at speed, especially with payload. So you can see there that that bump stop's hit quite a few times, and then there's probably a similar story up the top here, where there isn't a great deal of clearance between that bump stop and the leaf spring. The damper outboard of the chassis rail, so this buys you a bit of space. Again, if we throw back to Kia Tasman, that damper sits inboard of the chassis rail, so all of a sudden you lose a lot of space up in this area here, but by moving that outboard for this platform, it's given them the opportunity to mount the battery up here. So that battery has taken up basically every single inch of space up there that is available. And you can see here as well that this spare tyre, again, only just fits here, because that is the lowest point of the car, and it is just making clearance there with the tyres. They really have packaged this as tightly as they can. You can see here as well, there is not a kilowatt hour worth of battery they could have actually added in here to make this anymore. You would have to completely redesign the rest of this platform. So unless battery technology improves and you're getting better energy density from the battery, it's just going to be impossible to fit anything extra up the back here. So, and then last thing I wanted to show you as well is just on the tow bar, have a look at this. These bolts are enormous where it mounts there to the chassis rails. So for them to retain 3.5 ton towing and to have the rigidity a standard Ranger has when it comes to towing that much load, they have gone to a lot of effort here to really just secure this and make sure that it fits in properly and doesn't interfere with any of that equipment as well. So there you go, a look under the Ford Ranger plug-in hybrid. When we tested the Canon Alpha plug-in hybrid, we also had a look under that vehicle as well. So if you do want to check that video out, you can click up there to watch that. Okay, so we've just hit the road in the Ranger plug-in hybrid. Let's start off with something I'm slightly thankful for. Because this dual cab was released a little while ago, it doesn't have to have all of the painfully annoying safety stuff that is required today for new cars. So, you know, if you do buy one, consider yourself lucky you don't have to deal with all the beeps and the bongs that genuinely drive me mad. So let's talk about the thing that is immediately obvious. And this is something that I picked up on when we were doing our sort of first drive of the car. And that is that the ride is pretty firm. I'm noticing here while we're driving slow around the ride and handling track, it is so busy and it is picking up everything on the road. A lot of that has to do with the physics of mass, right? This vehicle is heavy. It weighs almost 2,700 kilos. And that is before you try and tow with it or try and put some load in the tray. So they have this issue where, you know, you have a heavy vehicle that is heavier than the rest of the vehicles in the Ranger range, but you still want it to have the same towing capacity and reasonable payload. So you've got to have a breadth of availability and options there for your suspension. So it needs to be able to take all that load and be comfortable, and it also has to be fairly comfortable when it's unloaded. And unfortunately, that's where it all falls apart. They've kind of engineered this so that it will take all of the load that it needs to take, but as a result of that, it is a little uncomfortable here when you're driving without a load in the back. So not the worst thing in the world, but just something worth noting, I think. Outside of that, let's talk about the drivetrain. So this kind of baffled me at first. They're using a 2.3 litre turbocharged 4-cylinder petrol engine as the internal combustion engine. So no diesel, and it should be similar to the engine that they use in the Maric, which is actually quite feisty, has a heap of punch, and is really enjoyable to drive. Instead, what they've done is detuned it, and the reason they've detuned it is because the engine actually needs to meet all of the emissions regulations for Europe, the upcoming emissions regulations. As a result of that, it has to have a lot of onboard emissions controls, so particulate filters. It has quite aggressive emissions controls that mean that they can't have that full complement of power. As a result of that, 138 kilowatts of power and just over 400 newton meters of torque. So it's massively down on what you're going to find in the Maric equivalent or in the engine that they use in the States in the Ranger. But it is assisted by an electric motor, and that electric motor produces 75 kilowatts of power. So it has a combined output of 207 kilowatts of power and almost 700 newton meters of torque. So the combined output is pretty good. I am driving right now in EV mode, or it's in auto mode, but this EV button here allows you to switch between several modes. You've got auto EV, all electric driving, so that is just EV only. Energy save, so basically EV later is what they call it. It allows the car to maintain this level of charge by running the internal combustion engine. And then you also have EV charge, which uses the internal combustion engine to charge the battery. It is a very slow process, and I don't recommend that if you need to do anything in the next hour or two, because it takes forever to charge the battery. So don't bother wasting any time on that. And then down the bottom here, you'll see the driving range with your internal combustion engine and the driving range with the battery. So 18 kilometers of driving range, and we have 60% battery. So it gives you an idea of how little range you will actually get with the battery assistance here. In terms of responsiveness, how does all that feel? If we put this into just EV mode and you pin the throttle, it doesn't actually, oh, here you go, that's interesting. So that's something that they've changed, because when I was at the launch and we had it in EV mode, it actually didn't kick the internal combustion engine on at all unless I hit OK, whereas now when I get to the end of throttle travel, actually no. That's so interesting. Now it's not turning the internal combustion engine on at all unless I click OK. That is so weird. So I turned it on before because it said it needed the performance, but now it's just ignoring that. So if you do have it in EV only and you just lean on the throttle, It isn't amazing. You've got 75 kilowatts of power trying to pull this vehicle along, and you can imagine that that isn't exactly the world's most entertaining or fastest thing. It is fine if you're driving in and around the city and you don't want to be switching the engine on if you know that you're going to be charging shortly, but it isn't a mode that I'd be using to drive everywhere. The auto mode, on the other hand, it kind of gives you the best of both worlds. It will run as a preference the EV mode, but then if you do need a bit more grunt, it will kick the internal combustion engine on, and then you get that surge of torque. So that is the sort of best balance between them. Now I'm going to explain how this differs from other dual cabs on the market in terms of the operation. The electric motor is integrated within the transmission, and here it's a 10-speed transmission. And the way that works is that when the internal combustion engine is off, the electric motor is able to drive the vehicle and power the driveline just as it would if it was just an internal combustion engine. Then if you're just running the internal combustion engine, it can effectively bypass the electric motor if it needs to, or it can work in unison with that to give you that extra punch. So it is always there. The benefit of this system, and this is the same system that GWM uses in the Canon Alpha plug-in hybrid, benefit of this system is that the rest of your four-wheel drive controls are the exact same as a normal Ranger. So you get to have rear diff lock, you get to have low range, it's all very similar. The Shark, on the other hand, just uses 2 electric motors and a big battery. And they can fit a big battery like that because beneath the skin, between those front 2 axles, you've got plenty of room to snag a battery in there. So that's the advantage of that system. The downside is that it is really just an all-wheel drive car. When we've done our off-road testing in the Shark, it doesn't have any torque multipliers or a low range or anything like that. It is pretty limited in terms of what it can do off-road. Now, in saying all of that, how does it actually feel behind the wheel? So at the moment, I've just got it in 2-wheel drive high range. I'm just going to punch the throttle. Yeah, it feels pretty punchy. Despite this weighing 2.7 tonnes, it really gives you a nice kick in the back and it moves along very briskly. It's not anywhere near as quick as a BYD Shark, but it is quick enough to feel nippier than a diesel Ranger. One of the benefits as well is that the vehicle can plumb energy back into the battery through regen. So as I start slowing down here, it's able to use that electric motor to put energy back into the battery. It doesn't really have like a single pedal driving mode or a heavy regen setting. It's very light in terms of regen, but it will activate when you start riding the brake pedal. And just on that as well, the brake pedal feels like it's well synced with the car. So you're getting a good mixture of regen and also mechanical braking there. The pedal feel itself is pretty decent. Let's talk about economy. So Ford claims that you're going to get around 3 litres per 100 k's when you have a mixed cycle between internal combustion and electric. We are currently sitting on 10.2 litres per 100 k's. And that, I think, is the biggest issue I've got with this whole thing, right? 10.2 litres per 100 k's, at that point, you're pretty much using the same amount of fuel you're going to use in a 4-cylinder Ranger, and you're getting pretty close to what you're going to be using in a V6 diesel Ranger. So what exactly is the point of the electric stuff? It's fine if you're going to be charging it every single day and if you're going to take advantage of it, but ultimately, if you're draining the battery pretty quickly, which you will be because the range is amazing, you are just going to be using the internal combustion engine, and it's going to be lugging around 200 or 300 extra kilograms worth of electric components that you're not using at the time. So yeah, just think about that if you are buying one of these. Really, the benefit is either the Pro Power on board, or if you are going to charge it every day and you're traveling less than 50 kilometers between your charging stops, you are just going to be better off both financially and in terms of economy just buying a standard diesel Ranger. Okay, let's tackle our sine waves. We do this at 130 k's an hour, which is maximum speed limit in Australia, and it gives us an idea of what body control is like and how they've engineered the suspension package. Alrighty, so there's 130. Oh, that is very bouncy. You can see the dilemma they've got there. They've tried to really stretch this chassis to its absolute limits in terms of its load carrying and the mass that it's moving around, and it's just not paying dividends when it comes to body control. It is really floaty over that, and I think we're going to notice that a fair bit when we start towing with it, which we'll get to shortly. Okay, so bumpy road. See how it performs over this at 90 k's an hour. Yeah, so there's a fair bit of body movement as it sort of traverses this stuff. because it is on the firmer side, you can kind of hear it in my voice that it is bouncing around a fair bit. This is our condensed sine wave. Yeah, it was just floating over the top there, really catching every single one of those bumps. So yeah, it just feels like it's on the firmer side. Now you've got drive modes here, a whole stack to choose from. So we're going to whack it over into sport mode. I want to see what this is like. So it switches over to 4A when we do that. I want to see what this is like around the ride and handling track when we get up it and see whether it handles as nicely as a Ranger does, because it is one of the big benefits of a Ranger. It really gets along very well. No one's really going to be driving like this normally, but it just gives us a chance to test these cars. Tyres aren't great, they don't have a great deal of traction, but that is pretty standard with all terrains. Gee, I tell you what, it has got some go. Yeah, it's very punchy, this setup. So it's like through this mid-corner bump, it's sort of bouncing around a fair bit. Yeah, the brakes feel good. Yeah, look, despite its mass, it is doing a reasonably good job here. So it has retained a lot of the driving dynamics that have always, helped Ranger feel agile. It's getting along. It's actually surprisingly good. Give it a punch on the back straight here and see how this feels. Yeah, that is hauling along really nicely. It's got some long legs, very surprising, nice one. Didn't think this would be as sporty as it is. So outside of tyre noise, you are getting a fair bit of wind noise, and I don't know if that's the sailplane or the roof racks, but you do notice that it is a little windy out there today, but not too crazy, but I am noticing a lot of wind noise while we're driving here at sort of semi-highway speeds. So we put it up against our calibrated sound meter. What I'll get the guys to do is just overlay how the plug-in hybrid compares to other vehicles in the Ranger range, so you can see where it all fits. In terms of visibility, I can see clearly down the front there. Wing mirrors are nice and big. Visibility out the back is fine. This feels no different to a standard Ranger on that front. Now, we're going to do just a little bit of performance testing here, because I want to see how quick this is to 100. We'll actually go through to 120. I've just put it into sport mode. I thought, let's try two-wheel drive high range, 4 auto, and then I'll just do EV mode only, just to see how quick it is. So this is 2-wheel drive high range. I'll turn traction control off, and we'll see how it goes. All right, here we go. Load it up a little. It feels somewhat limited in 2-wheel drive high range. So there's 90, 100, and 120. Okie dokie. Let's see how that went. So that's 0 to 100 in 8.34 seconds and 80 to 120 in 5.66. So reasonably good acceleration times, definitely quicker than the 4-cylinder diesel. So we'll head back, give it one more crack in 4-wheel drive auto. Okay, so 4-wheel drive auto, sport mode. Let's see how this goes. Felt a little quicker off the line there. We'll see if it actually makes a difference. There's 100 and 120. All right. Let's have a look at how that went. So 0 to 100, 8.21 seconds, so marginally quicker, and 5.63 seconds for 80 to 120, which was virtually the same. So we'll head back now and give it a crack in EV mode and see how that feels. All electric, there we go. Okay, we're in EV mode now. We'll see how it goes. All right, here we go. So I'm just going to stand on it. Oh, that's leisurely. Okay, 50, 60, 70. All right, I'm going to have to use quite a bit of our access road here. 90, I think at this point in Jimny is quicker. There's 100. I need to get to 120 before this road ends. Hopefully I can achieve that. Okay, we're running out of space. 110. Come on. We're running out of space. I'm going to have to hit the brakes. And no, I'm going to run out of space. Yeah, we could not get to 120, so we'll just see what it was like 0 to 100. So 0 to 100, 25.06 seconds. Compared to the Shark, which does it in like faster than a Raptor. So yeah, not exactly all that fast in EV only mode. Okay, let's do a stop from 100 to see what the brake and tyre package is like. All right, here we go. Wow. Fair bit of dive there before it actually does anything. That was interesting. All right, let's see what that stopping distance is. Wow, that is terrible. 3.12 seconds, 44.15 metres. Yeah, not a very good stopping distance at all. That's one thing that Ford definitely needs to improve. The fact that Kia Tasman stops maybe four plus metres better than this, I think just tells you that they need to work on either the tyres or the braking system. But yeah, that just needs to be improved because this will be significantly worse in the wet. Okay, how quickly does the Ranger plug-in hybrid go in reverse? Let's find out. Here we go. 50 k's an hour in reverse. Okay, time to do a little bit of towing. We're going to use the hill road that we've used in our previous mega test, and I'll run you through what this is in just a second. But the trailer on the back, 3,500 kilos, 350 kilos of downball weight, and we have no additional load in the vehicle here. And I'll run you through those numbers in just a second. I'm going to put this into tow mode. I've added our trailer into here, so using the towing menu, you can basically configure a trailer, and it allows the blind spot monitoring system to take the trailer length into account when it lights up your blind spot monitors, which is a really good feature. And then I'm going to put this into tow mode, which is just down here, so tow haul. And what that'll do is basically cater towards towing with gear shifts and making sure that we have the torque that we need to get out of sort of bends and that sort of stuff. So let's hit the road and see how it goes. So the hill road here is basically representation of just a typical country road here in Australia. Difference being, I'm not going to stay in the left-hand lane, I'll just use the entire road. We use this road for our big dual cab, big SUV tests with the trailer on the back to see how these vehicles are going to perform in real world scenarios. So straight off the bat here, it feels really responsive. That's one of the big benefits of having electric assistance. You're able to call on that pep when you need it. Even though we only have 8 kilometres worth of range left from the battery, you've got to remember that with every plug-in hybrid, you actually don't ever use the entire battery. As you would have seen in our tests with the Shark, when we try to deplete the battery, it gets to a point at around 10 or 15% where it stops drawing energy from the battery. It always wants to have that reserve if you need it for a surge of acceleration. Shark's a slightly different example because it needs electric power to run at lower speeds, whereas this will always have that little bit of extra charge to give you the punch in the back when you actually need it. And so far, it's doing a pretty good job as we start progressing to our downhill section into the U-turn. Now, there are no paddle shifters here on the steering wheel, so I'm having to basically manage that myself. You do have shifters here on the gear stick, but I don't know, I just prefer to have something on the steering wheel. It would be much easier to manage. Now, coming out of this gully is always fun because it's quite a steep climb out of here. So we'll see how well this will pull our trailer out of here. So here comes our turn, and we'll get on the throttle now. And that's flat to the board. Yeah, it is hauling ass. Yeah, very nice. This genuinely has a fair bit of punch. One thing I'm going to call out, the big limitation you're going to have here, I mentioned earlier they're pushing this chassis to its absolute limits. The limitation you're going to run into is both on the GVM and the GCM front. GCM front is going to be your first limitation if you want to tow 3.5 tonnes, because if you look at the GCM, because this vehicle weighs so much, almost 2.7 tonnes, it's only around 300 odd kilos left once you have a driver in the vehicle. That isn't a great amount. So it means that if you're putting another passenger in or the kids, you don't have a great deal of extra headroom there. So immediately you're going to have a look at some sort of a GCM upgrade to get you to the point where you can actually tow 3.5 tonnes with more load inside the vehicle. And that's probably why I wouldn't be picking the top spec model if you are actually planning on towing 3.5. 2.5 is going to be much closer to the happy medium for a vehicle like this. Now here's our steep climb, 15.5% grade. I'm just going to pin the throttle here and we'll see how it feels going up the hill. Nice, that is gaining speed. Oh, that engine is all working. Yeah, gaining speed without any dramas. It does feel punchier than the V6 diesel Ranger that we tested here a little while back. It just has a lot more get up and go, and it's just willing to keep accelerating. It doesn't feel like it's ever in a dead spot there. So yeah, very impressive power for getting out of situations like that. We're setting off down our long descent now. I'm just curious to see whether you can actually, okay, you can't change any of the EV mode, so it's just auto EV for towing. Just on the ride, it actually feels a whole lot more settled with a bit of weight on the back, which is what I thought it would be, because like I said, they're trying to cater for a lot of load conditions here and it doesn't feel too bad. We'll see how unruly it gets on our bumpy section down the bottom, because that's where we are going to encounter some uneven terrain that may upset the vehicle. So gear down a little bit here. Nice, so it's doing a good job there of holding speed. I'm able to gear down to second there to hold 60 k's an hour. That's one of the advantages of a 10 speed. You've got a lot of ratios there to work with. So I'm happy with how that's going. Alrighty, so now this bottom section down here has effectively like a mini set of sine waves that we do sort of around 60, 70 k's an hour to see how the ride sort of starts feeling once we bounce through it. Okay, here it comes. Bounce through here. Yeah, feel pretty reasonable. Yeah, nothing too crazy. Just performs exactly how you'd expect a Ranger to perform. So, righto, so just a little summary there on towing. It's actually pretty good. So you have to have a look at your GVM and your GCM. That is ultimately going to be the limiting factor for a lot of people. If you are going to tow 3.5 tonnes day in, day out, probably a lower spec version is going to be more appropriate where you've got a bit of headroom. Keep in mind as well that lower spec versions come with an optional full-size spare. The curb weight figure for this car, because it comes standard with a full-size spare, includes the full-size spare, which is why you've got a little less headroom, whereas the other models, they appear on paper to have more headroom, but it's because they don't have a full-size spare, and I would absolutely be optioning a full-size spare if you are going to be towing. So it kind of begs the question, are you better off just using a diesel Ranger for towing, which is going to give you just a bit more latitude there in terms of your capacities? I mean, that is seems to be the obvious choice for me, but if you do have your heart set on a plug-in hybrid and you are going to buy one of these and do some towing, it does perfectly fine there without any dramas. Okay, time to do just a little bit of light off-roading. I just want to see whether this is as good as the rest of the Rangers on our light off-road course. So I can run you through the specs first. So approach angle, 30.2 degrees. That's the angle of the face you can approach before you hit the front of the car. Departure angle, 24.2 degrees, which is the same, but in reverse. Got a ground clearance of just over 220 mil and weighting depth of 800 millimeters. And you would have seen in that underbody section, there's a lot of electrical stuff under there, so you know, they seem fairly confident that you'll be able to do 800 mil of weighting with it. So I guess that is what it is. You've got low range, four-wheel drive low range, four-wheel drive high range, 4-auto, two-wheel drive high range. We also have a set of off-road modes and a rear diff lock, so we're going to play with some of that stuff and the hill descent control as well. So let's get started. So first up, we're going to start off in two-wheel drive high range, and that is just to see what the traction control system is like over our offset mogul. And we kick up a rear wheel in the air and then just see whether the traction control can handle getting the car out with only one wheel that has traction. So decent amount of wheel articulation there, even with all of that componentry. We do have all-terrain, so it should eat this stuff up. I'm just going to lean on the throttle now. Okay, I can feel the traction control biting. I'll just lean onto that a little bit more. There it goes there. No problems at all. Very nice. So just like a normal Ranger, it's able to climb over that without any problems. So we'll turn around now and head back over the mogul in four-wheel drive auto. Okay, so again, traction control stays on. I'm just going to lean the front tyre onto that concrete block just so we can create a bit of resistance. We'll unload that rear wheel, which is right about there. Unload that rear wheel and just roll onto the throttle. Okay, so we've got the front left and the rear right unloaded, a little bit more throttle. And there it goes there. So traction control, again, just doing its thing to get the vehicle off that. Boom, piece of cake. All right, let's head to our hill. So we do our hill in four-wheel drive low range. So to engage that, slot this into neutral, press 4L. Wait for the transfer case to engage. There it goes. Stability control is off. I'll leave the rear diff lock off just for the moment. In terms of drive modes in 4L, what have we got there? Normal, sport. Let's stick it in mud/ruts and see how that goes. Let's see what happens there. So it wants to switch back to four-wheel drive high range, which I don't want it to do. So I'm going to flick it back into low range. Oh, that's engaged. It has locked the rear diff on its own, so I'm going to just unlock that. Okay, let's see how it goes. So gradual throttle on the way up. If this all works, I'll come back and do it one more time. Nice. Very good. So traction controls there working a charm. And I've got our little mud bog here. Let's check into this. Tap down of the tow bar there, but so far so good. All the electrical systems are still working. All right, hill descent control. We'll just flick that on. Okay, got the camera running so I can see over the top there. And I think with this as well, we can adjust descent speed using cruise control here. Yep, nice. Speed that up. Very good. Look at that, piece of cake. So it feels just like a normal Ranger to get up and down this stuff, which is excellent news. Okay, let's head back to the hill. Try it one more time, but with stopping. Okie dokie, so same story again. I'm going to come to a stop and then roll onto the throttle. So I'll just bring this up to around there. Sorry, I've got the sun blinding me here. Okay, so letting go of the brake and rolling onto the throttle. Nice, so again, traction control system sorting itself out and letting us climb up without any dramas there, which is good. So final stop is the rocks. I'm just going to put this into, not into sand. Is there a rock mode? Mud, ruts, slippery? No, there's not. So I guess I'll just put it into, it's such a clumsy system, this, I'll just leave it in mud, ruts. Okay, head over the rocks here, see how comfortable this feels. And I'm curious to see whether there's any striking of rocks against the body because, you know, you don't want that. Thankfully, the battery is very well protected by the by that spare tyre, so it shouldn't be a drama. And I'm just riding the brake with the throttle here to see how that feels. Yeah, cool. So they've calibrated the throttle here, so it's not surging like it does, you know, if it's in sport mode or something. They've really dulled it out, so I can confidently ride brake with throttle, and it can just crawl over this without too many issues. Yeah, look at that. No dramas at all. Hey everyone, sorry to interrupt the video. I just wanted to include a little clip that I recorded after we actually shot our review, and it's this horrific sound the car was making when I switched it on one morning. Oh, it's making some rough sounds when it started. So this is a cold start on full electric with the battery full. Not good. So that sound was happening while the internal combustion engine was entirely switched off. I basically turned the car on so it could, I guess, warm up the cabin while I was packing away the electric cable. Ford didn't get back to us in time for this video going live with an explanation of what is happening, and I couldn't really replicate the issue afterwards, but I thought I'd include it here because my outro for this video happened before this sound happened, so I won't make any mention of it throughout the rest of the video. Okie dokie, so Ford Ranger plug-in hybrid, what do we think? So let's talk off-road and towing first. In terms of off-road, great. Standard Ford Ranger just does everything a Ranger does, and that is the original brief the car had. It can't compromise when it comes to that basic stuff. So off-road, big tick. Towing, I had no dramas there. It felt really powerful, suspension was good, so from a functionality point of view, it was fine. Where you're going to be limited though is your capacities, and if you are going to buy one of these for towing, you need to do your research on capacities before you buy one, because you don't want to get disappointed buying it, realizing you can't actually put anything in the vehicle and, you know, you've just wasted all your money. So check that out first, and if it is beyond its capacities or you're getting close, have a look at just a diesel one instead. What about the vehicle in general? Well, look, on its own in isolation, it's fine, but it is expensive, and when you look at stuff like the Shark and the Cannon, they're just both much better value for money. The Shark has just as nice, if not nicer, interior. It is faster than this. If you don't need to do off-road or towing, the Shark, I mean, just kills this in pretty much every way. The Cannon Alpha, I mean, again, that has a way bigger battery. It will do all the off-road stuff this will do. It made it up Beer O'Clock Hill. So I just think that it is just too expensive for what it is. There's no scope there, as you can tell, to add a bigger battery. So you just ask yourself the question, did they just miss a trick here when they were developing this? I don't think they had any idea that BYD was coming out with the Shark, and as a result, they've engineered this product that I think misses the mark in comparison to its peers. So anyway, that's my view on the Ranger plug-in hybrid. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. Have you bought one of these? Or if you didn't, were you looking at one and then bought something else instead? And if so, what did you buy? I'm keen for your feedback. If you did enjoy the video, share it with your mates. But until next time, take it easy.